I don't know if you can hear that, the birds chirping, the beautiful sound of nature, of the morning. It was making me think about the homeless, and I know I've probably mentioned this on The Pursuit of Truth before, but when you think about homeless people, most people's perceptions of them as that they're lazy, or they've chosen to be there, or they're drug addicts, or they're pretending, or and there is going to be a level of certain amount of that, but still you've got to look at them as human beings, as that no one surely would choose to live like that if they had the choice. If we weren't living in the system that we were in, people maybe are not capable of living within the system because they didn't have maybe a good upbringing. They didn't have two parents. They were in a foster care or in a system, and they weren't able to navigate and grow into working the system, into being part of it. I'm sure if you stopped and asked a homeless person about their past, you'd wish that you'd be happy that it wasn't yours. Because it's not going to be some pleasant story. It's not like George Orwell when he wrote Down and Out in Paris and London, where he chose to do it, where he chose to live homeless so that he could write that book, so he could see those experiences. He was a wealthy person. These are people that they've ended up there through years of suffering. The system that we live within, that we all choose to keep on going. But the thing that I was thinking of is, if you think about that person, you're seeing that person as a 30, 40, 50-year-old person, or 20-year-old maybe even, and maybe they're not very clean, and they might smell, not able to have a bath, and they're looking gaunt and worn out because they haven't had 3 square meals. But remember, they were a child. Every single homeless person that you see was once a child. And recall back those years and think about that child. That child was someone's love. There were parents to that child. And yeah, maybe some of them didn't have parents, or just one, or maybe fostered or adopted, or whatever the circumstance, depending on the country that they were within. But they were loved. And I think about this when you have your own children, you think about your own children that are in front of you, and you think how you love them so much, you do anything for them. When they get sick, you get so worried about them that they're going to be okay, that you pray for them, that you're hoping they won't get bullied when they're at school, that you're hoping they're going to have a good life, that they're going to be happy, that they're going to get married, or have a career that they enjoy. You have all these aspirations for your children. Imagine when they were young, they were unable to do anything. You held them, you wiped their bum, you gave them milk, you washed them with your own hands. That homeless person is exactly the same. Imagine that love that was given. Now, maybe in the case of some of these homeless people it wasn't, and that's why they're there, but let's just assume for the moment that they were once loved, and they were someone's precious. And those parents hoping that, and then when that child grows up, it finds itself in this situation. Imagine it was you. Imagine that's your son or daughter that's in front of you, begging for money. Yeah, and I know sometimes people say, and especially in religious books it says about not giving to the homeless because it keeps it on going, but some, it depends. Even governments say things like that. But the thing is, no one chooses to be there, do they? And yeah, some of them, they have coping mechanisms, and yeah, they may not be doing the best thing with the money that you're giving them. They may be doing drugs or alcohol, but maybe it stops them from doing crime because they need those things to cope, because they're sitting on a street in the cold, without a house, without a home, without anyone to love them anymore. That's the system that we live in. That's the thing that we allow to go on day by day. Imagine it's your child. Imagine you loved that child, you raised that child, and you gave it all that love and all that aspiration, and then, years pass, and then you walk down the street and you see your own child there, suffering, that you hope so much for. It just seems so sad when you think about it that way, that child now grown up is now homeless and maybe doesn't have those good memories anymore because they've had to block them out with alcohol or drugs to try and get by, just to survive till they die. Because that's all we're all doing, isn't it? We're all just surviving till we die. We all have an expiration date. We're all going to end. Everything born has to die, a taste of death. We all know this. This is inevitable. And sometimes we forget about it, and that's why we allow these things to happen. And we forget it's our only one existence, unless you believe in reincarnation. So yeah, when you see a homeless person, and you instantly get all these thoughts and feelings based on things that you've seen in television and movies, and what other people say about them to you, remember that they were once a child, that they were someone's love, that someone gave all that love to this and brought this person up, and now they're suffering. And I'm not saying it's any greater than anyone else's suffering, and yeah, sometimes not all homeless people help themselves when they're given shelter and etc., but some of that is because of the rules that was given around it. It's just sad to think that we live in a world, and this is just one example. I've spent 400 editions detailing different examples, and there's loads of people out there that can tell you about the suffering of humanity. And maybe humanity has suffered more in the past, or will more in the future, or is more now, I don't know. But what I do know is that for a long time humanity's been suffering, and I guess some people may square that away by saying that, well, we all have to suffer. Do we? Do we really all have to suffer? Where do you get that from? Well, we all have to suffer if we live within the system that we live within, where we don't care about each other. We pretend to care with charities, we have band-aids like that don't really solve the problems. We have governments that we all elect, two old men, white men competing against each other in the Western world, and corruption and helping out their friends and giving contracts to each other, and then once they leave, joining different boards and getting paid loads of money to talk about things, or they can go into illegal wars and have blood on their hand and still get invited to talk about the state of the country. I mean, there's just so much wrong with the system that we live within. It's just... And then that's going on to another topic, but just what I wanted to detail was that idea of that when you see a homeless person, remember that once they were a child, that were loved and they were innocent, and how their parents would feel if they saw them. Say they died, their parents, in a car accident after loving that child so much, and then that child is traumatized and goes through the system and then ends up homeless. How the tears would be cried for that. I know it sounds poetic and everything, but it's not even a poem, it's not even a story, that's real life. That's the real life that we all have voted to keep on in existence. Take care, take it easy, God bless and peace.